but this is a bit loud. Sorry about that. I just thought the music was a little bit loud. I am hopefully at the last chapter of Life in Spirit. Thoroughly enjoyed reading it. I'm now at the section 2 of this book. This is Harry Edwards' account of the afterlife. It was published in 1976, and I have read all the chapters, which deals with the various insight he's giving. It's been very good. I have enjoyed it. I am now at the 5th part, I think, of a guide for the development of mediumship, and I hope I'll finish it today. Clairaudience. Clairaudience is the hearing of spirit voices. Its effect can be very real, just as if someone's voice is being orally heard. In this respect, it can be likened to an objective clairvoyance, for the simple reason that the words heard are not audible to another, or to any sound recording device. They do not exist physically at all. The physical ears do not hear them. The explanation is that it is the spirit ear of the medium's spirit body that receives the spirit sound radiations, which are transmitted to the mirror, where they are interpreted into the form of words that the mind can appreciate, in the same way that he hears physical sounds. Like objective clairvoyance, this is a rare form of mediumship. Intuitive clairvoyance is more generally the rule. With this, the impression comes as if the medium is listening to the thoughts which form noiselessly in his ears. That is the way it is sensed. This is but another way of the consciousness receiving thought impressions in the form of words. In public mediumship, we have seen the medium appear as if he is listening with his ears. While there is no real harm in this, it is apparent to knowledgeable observers that he cannot receive physically audible words from spirit in his ears. The appearance of physically listening is but a way of inviting communication by adopting the act of listening. The beginner is advised to avoid this stimulation, for no words are audibly heard, whether objective or intuitive. It is helpful when seeking any form of mental mediumship to close the eyes, and especially so when sitting for development. If the eyes are open, they cannot help but register on the mirror that which they are seeing, and in the beginning it is best to keep this as clear as possible. As the mediumship advances, this is not so necessary, for the normal vision becomes just a background to the consciousness, just like music can be, while one is actively engaged in reading. Moreover, the open eyes enable the medium to observe the recipient of the message. This has its good and bad aspects, for while the medium is able to observe from the recipient's manner his acceptance of the evidence provided, he can also see when it is not, and this can be disconcerting, and tends to lead the medium into mental tenseness, and to stressfully seek explanations or escape routes, as already mentioned. Intuitive clairvoyance is a subtle condition. It can be described as listening in to soundless words. The medium is conscious of an impression of hearing. Word formations come to the consciousness. For the beginner again comes the difficulty to distinguish between what he considers maybe his imagination and actual spirit communication. As in all things, experience counts. When a beginner hears, he should either tell of the words he has heard, if the time is right for it, or hold them in his memory to relate afterwards. As a rule, it's best to accept any such impression as coming from a spirit source and await confirmation. As the mediumship develops, it will become very clear whether the words or message are spirit-directed or not. There is no significance in either a red or blue light being used in the development circle. The red light having a lower light frequency is thought to be the best. The only value is to give the sitters a sense of assurance, which may be absent in total darkness, and to prevent strong visual images being recorded on the consciousness. Trance addresses. This is one of the easier type of mediumship, once the guide has entered into the orbit of the beginner and is able to transmit through thought flow to the medium. It also needs the desire on the part of the medium to give trance addresses. Trance speech is simply the giving of form in the shape of words to the thought flow from spirit. In 99% of trance speech, the medium is conscious of what is being said. He is, as it were, listening to himself speak, without any conscious effort to create the address himself. In this state, the mind of the medium is tensed up, for the thought flow is vigorous and continuous. The mental organization is working freely, for the simple reason it is being used by the guide, and the medium does not need to make any conscious effort to construct sentences or provide the substance for them. The guide is doing that. As the guide projects the thought intention, so it is the medium's subconscious mind that frames it into words. It will be found in trance speech, no word is ever used whose meaning is outside the medium's knowledge. The more he is versed in the use of words, the more picturesque and fluent will be the speech. The writer, and possibly many others, have heard illiterate phrases coming from an unlettered medium, and a comment has been made. Surely no advanced spirit guide would speak in that fashion. Reflection will show that the words are not those of the guide, but of the medium's ability to interpret the thought flow. It is the thought directive the guide is responsible for. A medium can be likened to a violin. If the instrument is a poor one, it is reflected in the musical tones that comes from it. The result also reflects the musician's intimacy and knowledge of how to use the violin. Give a master violinist this superb instrument and the result is far different. Every good instrumentalist has to know his instrument, the feel of it, and this can only come through usage and experience. It is just the same with mediumship. In the early days of development, the beginner will receive a strong desire to speak out some form of words or greeting, and he should learn to subjugate his self-consciousness and encourage his voice to allow the words to be spoken. Self-discipline is also needed. For example, if in the circle another member is under control, then he should await the time when he can speak without upsetting the other person. So long as the guide remains in control, this can be done. But generally speaking, the beginner should not hold back of himself any urge to speak. There must be a beginning for everything, and the sitter needs to encourage his voice to speak, even though it feels tense and constricted, and even if he thinks the thought comes from his own mind. At first the voice may be over loud or even a whisper, but as time goes on, the tone will become more regulated to the need of the situation. It is again stressed that in the early days, encouragement must be given to allow speech to come. The leader of the circle will most likely encourage this, but the final effort can only come from the sitter himself. No doubt, many good mediums that himself he be used in public, such as taking part in a church service, have failed to develop because they have consistently held themselves back, thinking it was themselves and not the guide who created the desire. It is said one has to crawl before one can run, and it may be truly said that our most gifted mediums had to go through the stages of initiation and literally force themselves to speak their first words under a degree of control. As trance speech becomes more easy, the medium can easily test whether it is himself or the guide who is directing it, by trying to give a short address of a few words without any control being felt. He will very soon see the difference. It is only the experienced and practical speaker who can do this freely and without hesitation. Even then, he would need to know his subject very well. In trance addresses, there is no hesitation. The words flow on and on, sometimes too long for the comfort of the listener. In the early days, the beginner will need to feel the guide take control of himself before any attempt to speak is made. He will need to encourage the first words to come, and then the address will flow on. When the medium feels confident enough, then he can let himself be used in public, such as taking part in a church service. He will need to take advantage of the time occupied in the singing of the preceding hymn to sit and seek the coming of the guide's influence. Remembering the 2 points: 1, that he will be conscious of listening in to himself, and 2, that a form of encouragement must be given. There is no harm in letting his mind be ready to accept the guide's introductory words or greeting, or even to have in mind a thought that has appealed to him from the lesson that he has read, or any other thought directive that has come to his mind before the guide takes over. It may well be the guide has already impressed the mind this way. By using this directive and letting the initial words be spoken concerning it, so is the way made clear for the guide to take over. Once the address has commenced, the medium should never interfere with it under any circumstances, not even to consciously correct a mispronounced word, for any such interference will break off the contact, and the medium will be left floundering, speechless, and will have to sit down. The writer at one time used to give trance addresses, and the following experience may be of interest. Being fully accustomed to public speaking, one Sunday morning, the author wished to include in the address a phrase that appealed to him. He felt he had sufficient command of words to carry on, even if the trance state was interrupted. As he listened to himself speaking, his subconscious mind found the opportunity to introduce the phrase, and he did, but it broke off the spirit flow of thought, and he found himself unable to carry on at all, and had to sit down. It is related, however, that he explained to the audience what he had done, and the mistake he had made, for it was an object lesson, both for the speaker and the audience. The ultimate objective with every medium should be that communication would come naturally, whatever form it takes, without the need for the medium to go under a condition of full control. That whether it be clairvoyance, clairaudience, speaking or healing, the picturizations or thought flow will come easily, as second nature, through attunement, intuitively. That whether it be clairvoyance, clairaudience, speaking or healing, the picturizations or thought flow will come easily as second nature through attunement intuitively. Transfiguration. In the early days, as the guide takes over the direction of the mind and a state of control draws near, it may well be that the breathing rhythm will become accelerated, and this should be allowed to continue as has already been said, and the face may feel as if changes are taking place with it. This sometimes gives rise to the idea, especially in red light, that the sitter is being transfigured by the guide, when most times it is nothing of the sort. The gift of transfiguration is a rare one. It is usually associated with physical mediumship, for a true transfiguration needs to be formed over an ectoplasmic base, and it's not the purpose of this book to discuss this. While it may be reassuring and appeal to the romantic side for a beginner to be told that he is being transfigured by his guide, it is better to avoid self-delusion, or being misguided by the sincere imagination of others present in the circle with him. While the leader of the circle will be able to clairvoyantly see the guide with the sitter, this is not necessarily transfiguration. Simulation of transfiguration by sitters or even some mediums, especially if they have mobile faces, can easily be induced in dim or red light, and the sincere sitter should not be persuaded by the comment of others. Proven transfiguration mediums are very rare. Physical mediumship. This is an advanced state of mediumship that many wish to have. It need not be a class of mediumship possessing a high spiritual order. Physical mediumship is a rare gift. Many seek it, but few attain it. Development is usually held in dark circles, i.e. no light at all. The reason for this is that manifestations are hampered by ultraviolet light rays. Infrared rays can be tolerated. As a rule, it is considered best for the developing circle to sit for the person desiring this gift. Some observations are offered at the end of this section, referring to physical mediumship, which anyone interested might read and discuss. Automatic writing. Automatic writing is akin to trance speech, the difference being that the hand is used to describe the intuitive thought flow instead of speaking it. Do not, however, expect the hand to suddenly proceed to write, as some beginners are told to expect, for this is most unlikely. You will be conscious within your mind of the formation of the thought that you watch your hand write, As in trance speech, the medium will not find it necessary to create the written thoughts himself, but just allow the thought intentions to flow, and the hand to write them down. Owing to the fluency of the thought flow, the hand is often unable to write quickly enough to keep up with it, and so the writing degenerates into a scribble. If the automatic writing is to be encouraged, then there should be imposed a degree of self-discipline to keep the writing orderly. As a rule, those who have no personal desire to speak in public under trance find that automatic writing is a way in which to allow the guide to express himself through his medium. There are always those who possess any particular gifts of the spirit to a marked degree, and this applies to all forms of mediumship. With automatic writing, we have the very exceptional spirit-inspired scripts by Geraldine Cummins, and that wonderful book, Hafed, Prince of Persia, which was written through David Dudruit. He was an unlettered man, and it was unlikely that in this case he was mentally cognizant of what was being written, for the words used were outside his knowledge. The writing should be for the personal benefit, instruction and advancement of the medium, and any idea of receiving writings for publication should be discouraged. It is only natural that a medium who is able to write inspiration in this way is very proud of it. Often the theme of the writing is of theological character, pointing out the way of right living, and the medium desires that others may profit from the teachings. But it is a fact that there have been thousands of manuscripts written that have been submitted to publishers, but very few have seen their way into print, and only then at the medium's expense with a very limited sale. It is, however, the beginner has the desire to let his hand act as a transcriber of spirit thought, he can do so. He should await a time of quietness in the house when all the necessary tasks have been completed, so that his outlook is contented and he is ready to enter into attunement with his guide. He should have a biro, pen or pencil or block of paper on a table before him. As he feels the influence of the guide draw within his orbit and his thoughts are taken over, then he should write them down. Just as in trance speech, when the medium listens to himself speak, so in writing he is an observer to watch his hand write words and phrases. Once the hand becomes the agent for the thought flow, it should not be interfered with in any way, nor should the writing be questioned or the words to come be anticipated. With usage, the guide will regulate the thought flow to the speed that the hand can write legibly. Many specimens of automatic writing one sees are lines of almost intelligible scribble with one word running into another. This is untidy and poor mediumship. In trance speech, the voice may carry an effect of a different personality, so it may be in writing the character of this may vary from the medium's usual calligraphy. In trance speech, the eyes are closed, but in writing they are open as observers of what is taking place. In automatic writing, there is a greater chance of the medium's mind superimposing itself over the guide's thought flow. That is the case with trance speaking, when the whole being is more highly tensed, but experience will overcome this. The medium should set himself a limit of time before he commences, say 30 minutes, and this should not be exceeded. He should also sit for writing at a definite time or times in the week. Once is best, but twice should not be exceeded. Naturally, the beginner in his enthusiasm wishes to do as much as he can, and it may be the guide is anxious too. Yet there is more need for self-discipline in writing than with other forms of mediumship, for it can tend to get out of hand, and that must be avoided at all costs, not only for the medium's peace of mind, but for the sake of mediumship too. Psychometry. The theory behind the practice of psychometry is that an object that has been in the possession of a person or associated with definite incidents can absorb radiations from its owner, and that a sensitive, a clairvoyant, can become aware of these impressions. There are speculations as the means by which this process operates. One theory is that the radiations are of a physical origin that the sensitivity of the medium is able to receive. The second idea is that the radiations are of a spirit character, received from the owner's spirit self, and these the spirit awareness of the medium is able to receive. A third explanation is that the object acts as a means of contact between the medium, the owner of the object, and the guide, and from this personal attributes and descriptions are given through the faculty of clairvoyance. In this connection, it is well to consider that there can be affected a blending or awareness of the spirit personalities between two people, a spirit consciousness of each other, in a similar way to that in which we are conscious of a physical awareness. For example, when two people are attracted to each other or repelled, this is a result of spirit affinity or spirit enmity. It may well be that the process known as natural selection arises from this, which explains why a deep bond of brotherhood or sisterhood or love itself comes into being between persons. Thus, psychometry may be a form of clairvoyance, as between two persons, or in addition, clairvoyant pictures and thoughts aided by the nearness of the guide who can act as the spirit commentator. In order for the beginner to learn the way to develop this gift, he should take an object without knowing to whom it belonged, and then seek the state of attunement with spirit, not necessarily with his guide, though there is no harm in doing so that the mirror of his mind can receive impressions. When these are received, the beginner should then speak and describe whatever impression, thought, or picture his mind received. He must not allow his own personal thoughts or impressions to add to that which his mind receives. The beginner should not be discouraged on the first occasion if he does not get his message accepted by the owner of the article, but to have patience and persevere. As in all forms of mediumship, it is practice that makes more perfect the working of the gift. Spiritual healing. Spiritual healing is now considered to be by many the highest form of mediumship. Perhaps this is because the gift of healership should possess a high quality to differ it from psychic healing. Whereas the development of purely psychic faculties need not possess a spiritual incentive, spiritual healing certainly does. The primary qualities a healer possesses are those of generosity, love, and compassion. He cannot be of a mean or selfish kind. He needs to possess that deep inner yearning to heal the sick and to take away distress. Spiritual healing is a spirit science, where it is true of all forms of mediumship. Healing, by the very nature of its accomplishments, needs the presence of a guide or guides who have the particular knowledge of how to direct the correct qualitative remedial forces to master a given ill condition. It is probably very true that every guide possesses knowledge of this character to some degree, but it is reasonable to assume that as the healing gift develops, it will become necessary for other spirit personalities to come into the picture for dealing with specific diseases. The commencement of healing mediumship invariably begins in the healing circle, particularly so when the sitter is able to receive a condition of trance. Many healers have commenced their ministry under trance, and then as the development proceeds, the need for a trance state is overcome. This follows the acceptance of the fact that the guides are always present when there is a need for their services, and they are able to direct the healing forces to the patient via the healer's spirit faculties, without trance being essential. It is suggested that the beginner who desires to develop healing should, when he has been able to attain attunement, attend a healing circle, first as an observer and then later on to join in with the healing endeavor through his spirit self, as if he is actually taking part in the healing itself. Table communication. There are various methods to table communication, such as by the use of a Ouija board, using a glass to travel to letters of the alphabet, table tilting, etc. The beginner is strongly advised to completely shun these methods and have nothing to do with them. So-called communications obtained this way are most unreliable. There have been exceptional instances, but as a general rule they are either the product from influencing, perhaps subconsciously, on the part of someone present, or the sport of some undesirable, mischievous spirit. It is elemental and crude. It is from this undesirable practice that harm has come to those who indulged it, and reflected discredit on the good name of spiritualism, have nothing to do with it at any time. Conclusion. It is hoped from the foregoing that it will be observed that the development of spirit gifts is a natural process. The beginner should never accept anything that is said, and this includes what has been written here, without putting the matter before his common sense, to consider whether any act or statement is reasonable and is supported by psychic science. The gift of mediumship must prove itself. It is a natural gift, and therefore development is the following out of the natural processes. To sum up, do's and don'ts is perhaps the best way to bring this chapter to an end. Remember, the guide is using your mind. He does not enter into physical possession of your body. Everything is a mental appreciation. So is mediumship. Development means attunement. You cannot make the mind a blank. Mediumship is the employment of the mind by the guide. The computer brain interprets thoughts into words. Spirit vision is a projection of the picture onto the mind of the mirror of the mind. You cannot reach attunement by concentration. Avoid imitating what others do, even mediums. Avoid exhibitionism and posturing. Avoid pidgin English and baby talk. Do not embellish clairvoyance. Do not interfere with the flow of thought from the guide. Have confidence in the guide. Follow the advice of the circle leader. Maintain harmony in the developing circle. Do not listen to gossip about others in the circle. Maintain self-discipline. Never allow any impression of control to continue, except in the developing circle. Always return to full normality before leaving the circle. Be master of the mediumship. Do not let it master you. Do not allow the guide to come close unless invited to do so. Do not hold negative thoughts about your mediumship. Have patience. A slow development is generally best. Anticipate with pleasure the circle sittings. Always be punctual and regular in attendance. Have confidence in the circle leader that no harm can come to you. Always preface your sitting by a prayer for guidance and protection. Enjoy being aware of your mediumship. A blank mind knows no enjoyment. Cultivate a high code of spiritual values in daily life. Avoid meanness of thought. Be generous in all things. When control approaches, encourage it by making the effort to speak, etc. In description, describe only what you see and not what you think. Never interpose your own thoughts over those of the guide. In sitting, be comfortable. Loosen tight clothing. In sitting, put all thoughts of mundane matters out of mind. Be happy within. Know that your guide is always with you. Avoid the habit of scattering. God bless you's right and left and center. Cultivate an inwardly contented outlook day by day and enjoy life. Do not make yourself artificial or think you are super spiritual. Encourage characterized breathing, being conscious of taking in oxygen, inner strength and healing. Do this slowly. Count 3 slowly to assist the body to take advantage of the incoming strength. Then breathe out just as slowly, being aware you're discharging waste and ill conditions. Be natural, enjoy humor, and look for happiness in all things. Now, this is a lovely way to end this book, I would say. There is a lot of, there's an index. He has written a lot of other books. The Power of Spiritual Healing, The Healing Intelligence, 30 Years as Spiritual Healer. This is Harry Edwards' own story of his life, from the early development of his wonderful healing gift to his rise as the foremost spiritual healer in the world today. Wow! 1976 this was published. If you haven't heard of him yet, it seems as if we should. A Guide to the Understanding and Practice of Spiritual Healing, and The Mediumship of Jack Webber, which is an eyewitness account of one of the most remarkable mediumships of our time, presenting unshakable evidence of the reality of the spirit world. It contains 36 full-page photographs, unique in psychic history, testifying to the thoroughness of Harry Edwards' investigation. It's illustrated, post-paid £2. Now, all the books above can be obtained from the Sanctuary, Burrows, Lear, Sheer, Guildford, Surrey. Now, I have still not checked whether this is still in existence, but I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. Finishing, this was almost a guide, wasn't it? It's interesting for me to read as I am writing myself, and I have read another book called A Life in the World Unseen, which was brought through Anthony Borgia, and was the life of a priest, Monsignor Robert Hugh Benson, who died in 1914, and Anthony Borgia brought his life to paper and his afterlife, basically, and it's called Life in the World Unseen, and I have also read it, and I have translated it into German. I am not sure I'm going to do this one into German because, well, wishing everybody a very, very happy Monday. It is the 6th of the 6th, 2022, which is a 6, so it's 666. Have a good day. It is what we believe it is, isn't it? No, why is this not finishing now? Sunny day today, not raining like yesterday. Bye!